Hi everyone, sorry about that. We were in the middle of our live and then everything went blank. I'm not sure what happened. Yeah, the computer just decided to look as if it did a mini update. Hi Sian. Yes, so it looked as if the computer decided to do an update right in the middle of my live. That's just the way it is. No control over these things. For some reason, these laptops hardly ever give you notice whenever they're going to update. They just do it whenever they feel like. So I'm not sure if that's what was happening just now. Because usually, if it was updating, it would take long, or it would at least say that it is updating, but there wasn't any such notification. Yes. So there wasn't a hi, Han White. Yes, so there wasn't any such notification as to what's happening, why it shut down. I don't know if it is a computer glitch. I don't know if it is an internet issue, whatever the case may be. So we were discussing raised beds, how you can choose the best raised bed for you. Hi, Terrace Gardening. How are you? Yeah, so we were discussing how to choose the best raised bed for you and how to fill it cheaply, but in the middle of our discussion, my screen just went blank and everything disappeared. They could see a frozen picture of me, but they couldn't hear me or anything. So I don't know. You're good. Excellent. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so we asked the question, what do you grow in your raised bed? And if you have raised bed, and what did you grow? What do you grow in them? Yes, we also look at how you can choose the best raised beds for you. And we said that your raised bed, you're going to choose it based on what you're growing in it, the cost of material to fill it, um, whether you're going for an aesthetically pleasing raised bed or just something that is reasonable to build. Are you going to go with a ready built one? Do you go with a low one or a high one? Things like sitting, whether you want to sit and work on your raised bed, whether you want to stand to access your raised bed, or you're going to stoop to access your raised bed. These are factors that you need to consider. You need to consider your age and how you're feeling. Do you have back injuries, knee injuries, stuff like that? Because if you have back injuries or knee injuries, then you're going to need to build your raised bed at a height where you can actually sit on it and access the garden without having to bend your back too much. Okay. So as I was saying before, raised beds can be made of wood. You have some that are pre-assembled that you can buy, and some are made from metal, some can be made from plastic containers, etc. So you have to consider your circumstance to decide what is the best raised bed for you. What about spacing of your raised bed? How far apart do you space your raised bed? Do you space them just so that you can get the maximum amount of raised beds in? Do you space them based on uh, how much space you have and stuff like that? For me, I space my raised beds 2 feet apart, and I try to keep them equal distance, um, lined up properly so I can have a neat finish. And the reason I keep my raised beds 2 feet apart is because I find it very practical. If you're harvesting or you're bringing in material like your soil, compost, and stuff like that, you don't have to be making a lot of trip. You can use a wheelbarrow. So by making it 2 feet wide, I can actually push my wheelbarrow in between those raised beds. And at the same time, I had grass in between my raised beds. I just covered them over, got rid of that this fall. So I make them 2 feet wide also so that I could get my weed cutter or my lawnmower. So I can get my lawnmower in between it as well. So these are practical tips that you can put into practice, because sometimes you don't want to be carrying more material. But then again, if you are more interested in getting the most out of your garden in terms of produce, then you might want to put them a bit closer. But you still have to consider you want them far apart that you can walk in between them comfortably, especially if your raised beds are high. Mine are 18 inches. So, yes. Now, how do you build your raised bed so that the top of you can actually sit comfortably on the top of your raised beds? You can, depending on how wide the material that you're using to make your raised bed is, you can use a piece of 2x4 and lay it flat like you would do with an handrail. So you'd lay it flat on top of your raised bed. Hi, Healthy. Yes, I am back. Yes, so you can get a piece of 2x4 or a piece of 2x6 and lay it flat on your raised bed. And then that will provide a seat for you if you want it wider so you can sit comfortably without the 2x4 squeezing you too much. Then you can use a piece of 2x6. And how you would do that is, let's see. Okay, so this is the side of your raised bed. Attach a piece of 2x4 like that, flush with the top of your raised bed, and then you put a piece of 2x6 on it. And the reason you put a 2x4 here is because it's gonna give your 2x6 support so that it doesn't do this, and then you will have a comfortable seat. So you can do that with your raised bed so that you can sit comfortably on it. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so we discussed earlier what you can use to fill your raised bed, and the gardening worm lady, she was here on the show, but because my computer shut down prematurely, then she's not here anymore. But she says that she used leaves and stuff like that in to fill her raised beds. And yes, I also do that. And for my higher raised bed, as I was saying before, I use my raised bed is 18 inches. So for the bottom 8 inches, I use things like dried woods, dried logs in the bottom, and that will take up space, and it will also hold moisture, so it helps you not to use too much water when you are watering your plants. I think I will be planting in raised bed. Great tip for seating. Okay, thank you. Could you remind us what we could use? What you could use for, that's a good idea to put the 2x4 there for support for a little seat. Yes. Um, I created my raised bed using pallets. So my raised bed garden, the high ones, are about 5 inches wide, 4.5, 5 inches wide. The plan was to put 2x6 on it for seating, but I still haven't gotten around to that yet. So I guess that is one of my goals for next year. And why that question? Could you remind us what we could use? I don't. Can you tell me what you're asking about? Because I'm not very sure. Because we were discussing a few points. Right. So as I was saying, I use wood chips. I use logs, but I use dried logs. I don't use the green ones. You don't want to use any green wood chip or green logs in your garden unless you're not going to be planting for the first year. And the reason you don't want to use green wood or wood chips in your garden, okay, I answered it. Okay, good. The reason why you don't want to use green wood or wood chips in your garden is because the process of breaking down that the wood chips or the wood have to go through requires a lot of nitrogen. If you put green wood or green wood chips in your garden, it's going to take all the nitrogen that your plants would use. So you don't want to put any green wood in your garden. Locally, we have landscaping company that sells a garden bed mix relatively cheap. Cheaper still if you don't need delivery. I added store bought compost, manure, potting soil, topsoil. Okay, nice. We have quite a few landscaping companies here, but anything that you want in Saskatchewan, you're going to have to dig deep into your pocket for it. So, if I'm filling a low raised bed, then I would just use things like dried leaves, soil, compost, and worm casting and create a lasagna style. And that works perfectly for me. When my raised bed is high, however, most of the plants that we grow don't send their roots very deep. So if I have a deep raised bed, then I would use a lot of leaves in the bottom, a lot of logs and wood chips in the bottom to fill it up because those come cheap. And then the top 10 to 12 inches that is left, then I use regular material like compost, soil, and castings to fill it up. Yes, it is no good. I think the things here in Saskatchewan, well, things in Canada on a whole is expensive, but for Saskatchewan, it is more expensive. Hi, Maze Homestead. How are you? Um, things here in Saskatchewan is expensive because of how far away we are from the major provinces. So transportation cost is extremely high. Yeah, so because of that, I try to keep down my expenses in whatever way I can. Yes, so for those, I bought some soil because the soil in my yard has slag in it, which is metal melt, smelting byproduct. Okay, I don't want to grow food in yard until I get soil tested, assuming I can. Okay, I'm okay too. Yeah. Yes, so that's a good idea getting it tested before you start planting anything in there because that can be pretty dangerous. You don't want to have any heavy metal to be consuming. You should be able to get your soil tested. If you don't know where to go to get your soil tested, you can probably go to the agricultural department at a university and talk to them about it because most likely they will have the information. But your Minister of Agriculture should be able to provide you with such information as well. Right, so let's see the next topic, the next point. Do you buy raised beds or do you build your own? I mentioned previously that I build my home. I use used pallets to build my raised beds. They come free, which is what I like. Yes, they are free and they're pretty easy to work with. Um, how can you make your. So I built the raised beds with bottom instead of in the ground. Thank you. Yes, I have found a university for testing. Okay, that's good. Excellent. Another way to add material and to take some of the space in the bed to help prep it is to add scraps to the bottom layer with some carbon, and after about a month for scraps. Okay, nice, nice. Yes. So I built my own after watching the crafted Gemini. I used 2x6s, two, so they are 12 inches high. One is 4 feet by 8, and the other is 4 by 4, and one is 4 by 6. Okay, some nice sizes. Yes, as I was discussing earlier before my computer decided to shut down, how rude. Um, I build my raised beds no wider than 3 feet, and the reason is because I don't want to be stretching all the way across my to access the garden. So I build my raised bed no wider than 3 feet, and then I have 2 feet in between it so that I can get my wheelbarrow in between, and so that uh, what was the other reason? Yes, wheelbarrow and my lawnmower in between. Your hair looks nice. Oh, thank you. I don't really like it. I had to cut off most of it 2 months ago because I flat ironed it and damaged it. So I'm trying to see if I can get it to grow back. Thanks. I used plain pine lumber from Lowe's and 4x4s in the corners. I also layer with landscaping fabric inside because the bottom mostly closed up, but not totally, to help hold moisture. Yes, that's a point that I was going to be making as well with the landscaping fabric and that material that you use in your pools, in your fish. What is it called? You know when you dig the ground and you make your little pool for your fish. My brain is sleeping. And that material that rubbery material that you would use for to hold the water in, yes, you can use that to create what is to help hold moisture, and you can also use it to make your garden into a self-watering one, your raised beds. So you would cover the pond liner. Yes, thank you, that's the one I'm looking for. Right. So you would use that pond liner and put it all the way around your raised bed, but you don't want to have any gap, any seam in it. So you want one solid piece. So you have to order it based on the size of your raised bed. Oh, okay. Bye, Main's Home Free Homestead. Have a great day. And when you put that in the bottom, you can attach plumbing pipe to it so that you can drain out excess moisture, and you want to put that to the bottom of the raised bed so you can drain out excess moisture, and at the same time you can make your bed self-watering by adding pipes to the you can either add a hose connect to the pipe, or you can simply put plumbing pipes as in the PVC and then pour your water in there. So, yes, this is a method that you can use to water your garden. Goodbye, my dear. Okay, so if you had to choose between growing in raised beds or growing in the ground, which one would you go for, if any? Uh, I don't I don't really know if I would go for any in particular. I They both have their advantages and disadvantages. The advantages with growing in the ground is that It protects some of your plants from the weather, and it's easier for worms to get in there, like your native worms to get in to the soil to help to cultivate the soil for you. Um, but in general, I don't like the fact that if you have to be walking up and down through your garden, you're trampling a part of the garden, and then you have to go and cultivate that or till that section next year, and it will be a bit hard because you're making pathway in the garden unless you choose specific areas where that is your path, your walkway at all times, so you don't plant in those locations ever. But apart from that, oh, I was asking, if you were to grow in the ground or in your raised bed, which would you prefer? I like growing in the beds because I feel like I have more control, especially regarding to pests. But I won't mind growing in the ground, or don't mind. Then I could grow more without having to buy soil. Yes, so that is one of the advantages of growing in the ground. You don't have to buy soil. The only thing you have to do is continue to add your organic fertilizer, whether compost, casting, or store bought organic fertilizer. So that is the advantage of growing in the ground. I um I like the ground also for larger plants, because then when you plant in raised beds, depending on how high it is, if you're growing things like indeterminate tomatoes that can grow so high, up to 10 feet they can grow, then to reach that, the top of it would be really hard. I prefer growing in containers because it gives me more control. Yes, that it does. Um, I like the fact that you can turn out your container if something is wrong and restart your potting soil and restart your plant in it. I like the fact that it is raised up off the ground, so as LP says, it does help to control pests. And excuse me, I don't know why my hand is itchy. Yeah, so it is raised up off the ground so that it helps to control pests, and you get to make the soil that you want when you're planting in the ground. You don't get to make the soil that you want. You can modify your soil, but you still have the existing soil that is there. But when you plant in raised beds, you know exactly what is in your raised bed. I was thinking if I wanted to grow corn in the ground would be better, and indeterminates as well. Yes, that is true. But this year I am going to break that rule where corn is concerned. Um, I had a section the section of my garden where my kids have their raised beds. That over that side of the property is where I usually grow most of my corns. But then I relocated the kids' raised bed to that section. So now I don't have that region to grow corn anymore. So the original spot that I started planting corn in, I'm gonna continue there because I had two spots that I would plant corns because I love corn, so I try to plant as much as I can. So that original spot I'm going to be planting there, but then I have a raised bed that is close to that original spot. This year I am thinking of growing corns in that raised bed. That raised bed is 18 inches high, but I'm still planning to plant my corn in that raised bed. I will see how that works out. I will plant my corns in pots because they don't do well in the ground. Okay, now when you're planting your corns in the pots, consider the fact that corns are best planted in 4 by 4 squares, meaning 4 feet by 4 feet. And the reason why it is best to plant corns in 4 by 4 squares is because they help to pollinate each other. And if you're planting more than one variety of corns, then you want to keep each variety separate because you will end up with cross pollination. Now, the 4x4, not only does it help with pollination, because you would think that because the thistle is at the top of the corn, that thistle is what is going to pollinate that particular corn plant, but that is not the case. It is usually another corn plant that pollinates the next one. So in that case, it helps with pollination, and because they're in 4x4 squares, it helps to protect them against the wind as well, and it also make it easier for you to access your corns if they are in 4x4 squares. So if you're going to be planting your corns in pots, I would recommend, like you said, you were wondering if you could use that garden storage for raised beds, then I would recommend planting it in that because it is big, it has the space. It might not be a 4x4, but at least it gives you a bigger space rather than planting in small containers like regular totes and stuff like that. I will get a big pot for about 4 corns. Um, how big is your pot? You can put 3 corn grains per hole. When you're planting your corns, you can plant 3 corn grains per hole, and you want to keep your corns at least 12 or so inches apart. So I don't know if that information is beneficial so that you can have a good idea as to how much you can plant in that container that you're going to have. I look forward to seeing your corn, White Davy. Ah, I did not know to grow corns like that. Okay, thanks. Oh, you're most welcome, my dear. Yes, I only learned that 2 years ago, and I've been planting corn since I was a child. But I came across that information on, well, I don't remember what channel that was, but yes, I came across that information and I tried it, and it works pretty well. It protects your corn, especially from the wind. Thanks for your corn tips. You're welcome. Okay, what determine how close or how far apart you put your raised beds? I know I'd say she doesn't have any raised beds just yet because of growing space, but what determines how far apart you put yours? I told you already how what determine how close or how far apart I put mine, and it's because of the wheelbarrow to get in there and my lawnmower. I'm looking forward to the corn as well, Helpy. I don't know how it's gonna turn out in the raised bed. It's the first time I'm going to be putting corn in raised bed, but I've seen many people growing corns in raised beds, so I imagine that it should be okay as long as it has the nutrients and stuff that it needs, and it does because I got a lot of compost from the compost depot here for free, and I put a lot of it. I think I have about 5, 6 inches of it in my raised bed, so the corn should have enough nutrients to grow. I know it should be rich in nitrogen because based on how the compost smell, I imagine that they have a lot of horse manure in it, so I should have a lot of nitrogen. Following advice of Gardener Scott, I made sure I could walk between them but also reach with my hose. That said, yes, I guess that's another factor to considering, being able to reach it with your hose to water your plants. Never thought of that. I usually just buy a few hoses and connect them together. They are not quite 2 feet apart, so not far enough apart. I'm going to move them to put them back, to put them to the back of the yard in spring, and I will put at least 2 feet plus apart. Yeah, it can be closer, but if you want to be able to use things like your wheelbarrow or in there, because you might need your wheelbarrow to transport compost or whatever material you're putting into your garden, or you might need a wheelbarrow to harvest if you have a lot of harvest all at once. So I like mine being 2 feet or so apart so I can get in there. And then I initially had grass in between mine, so I had to cut it so I make it wide enough to fit my lawnmower. I was working with the space I have this year. I'll have to double up hoses as well. Good point about wheelbarrow. Okay, thank you. What do you use to fill your raised beds? Okay, I think I covered that point already. Yes, someone brought up the point before I reached to it, so that is good. We covered that. So these are all the questions that I have and all the points that I have planned for to discuss. So if you have questions, feel free to go ahead and I will answer them if I can. LP, where are you from? I know that Ann White is from England, London. Oh, you're from Michigan. What is the weather like over there in Michigan at the moment? Do you get extremely cold weather? What is extremely cold weather there? In our environment here in Saskatchewan, cold can be -50 without wind chill. Well, -45, somewhere about there without wind chill. But usually that only lasts 2 weeks. Do you have a lot of raised beds, LP? We've had 70s for the last week. That's usually warm for this time of year. Yes, I guess so. I don't know. We had nice warm, unusually warm weather last week as well. Unfortunately, that resulted in a snowstorm over the weekend. So yes, Saturday, Sunday, it's supposed to continue into today, but I don't know. Um, I'm in my basement at the moment, so I can't see if it is snowing. It wasn't snowing when I got up this morning, but we have over 24 inches of snow outside. I can't open my side door just yet because the snow is 2 feet high. But I'm gonna have to get out there and do some shoveling shortly. Okay, and I think now that we have covered all the points that I wanted to discuss, we can get below 0 Fahrenheit throughout the winter with a fair bit of snow. I'd say a warm day in winter is 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, let's see what that is in Celsius. I don't know. I don't know Fahrenheit. I'd like to use Celsius, so I have to convert it to figure out. -1. Oh, that's not bad. Well, for us, that's not bad because, but I guess for you that would be terrible because that's what you're used to, right? But for us, -1, I'd be happy for -1 temperature on our worst day. Yes, we go -45 for 2 weeks every year. Well, sometimes it's like -35, but between -35 and -45 every year for 2 weeks. Sometime within February, January, February, we'll have Yeah, -20 with the wind chill. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. We weren't made for cold. It's just too cold. I'm feeling cold the moment we're talking about cold. Yeah, I think it is too cold for me as well, but what can I do? I am here. I just try not to go outside when it is that cold. I need to go outside now. I need to get to my worms to look after them, but the snow is 2 feet high in front of my garage door. So I'm gonna have to go out and start shoveling. Not looking forward to that at all. This is the most snow I've ever gotten piled up in one location since I've been here in 10 years. Anyway, thank you all for joining me, and I enjoy talking with you guys. And we have come to the end of our lives. Sorry, I didn't have the conversion. Last year we kept freezing and thawing out. We had a freeze and a bit of snow, but it didn't stick. Oh, yeah. Sometimes, like in the earlier part of our snow season, the snow will come and it will melt because the ground is still a bit warm. But then we usually end up with a lot of snow afterwards. Like it will stay until latter. Sometimes some areas in Saskatchewan can have snow even in the early part of June, but in my region, the snow is usually gone by the first or so week in May. When it's late, most times it will be gone by sometime in April. I have 3 raised beds and about 5 grow bags. Next year, I might build another 4 by 8 foot raised beds. Yes, it's not that it snows in June, but it's just that the snow that is there, depending on how high it was and where it is, then the snow will take a long time to melt. But for the most part, the snow will be gone sometime at least the first week in May, and that is when it is late. Most time in April or so, the snow will be gone. I've seen cases where the snow is gone even the last week in March, but usually, even if the snow is gone, you can't plant until the very last week in May, unless it is cold weather crop. Then you might be able to take a chance with those. Our weather can be strange. Some weeks get in the weather of all 4 seasons. Wow, yeah, bipolar weather. We have that here too. It's funny because the temperature here can change in 24 hours, 40 degrees difference. So you wake up in the morning and your temperature is -40, and at 3 o'clock, which is the warmest part of our day here in Saskatchewan, the temperature can be as low as 1 degree. It is strange, and then down, it's really bipolar here. If you're going, it doesn't matter, you always have a jacket in your vehicle because you never know when the temperature is going to change suddenly. It is crazy, but what can we do? It's our life, eh? December through February is the coldest. March is still cold but warming up. Yes, that's how it is here as well. December through January. January, February are the worst. But December through February are the terrible months. Then it will start warming up in March. Um, the melting will start in March, but you'll be getting snow sometimes as well. So it's melting, but you might have snow falling. I think last year we had snow falling in May, which is very, not last year, because the growing season is ended. I keep saying last year, but yes, we had snow the first week in May this year. Usually have the snow would usually stop sometime in April, but the melting would start in March. That's how it is in England too. You mean bipolar? Yes. Today will be about 24 degrees C. Then at night, 1.5. Oh, yeah. It's crazy world, eh? The time will come when all of that will be gone and we'll just enjoy perfect conditions. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Okay, so that is it for today. Thank you guys. I enjoyed talking to you. I hope you have yourself a wonderful day. I will just linger around a bit to see if there's anything that you wrote that so that I don't miss it. But other than that, take care. Stay safe out there. Yes, I agree. It is great fun to talk to each other from time to time. Thank you. Very informative live. Thank you, and White. Bye. And I am out.